Edna, Fraser, and I'm an environmental activist artist.
And I'm Andrew Wonderly. I'm your Charleston Waterkeeper. We work to protect and restore Charleston's waterways, so you can use them for fishing, swimming, paddling without pollution.
And right now, we're on James Island Creek. Yeah, that's where we are. And this creek is wrecked. We're really having some problems here. In 2012, when I was swimming, I started getting sick. I started getting really sick. I got ear infections, I got throat infections, sometimes I'd have gastrointestinal things. And I went to everybody that should be concerned, and the Charleston Waterkeeper was the only group that cared enough to deal with it. And they started measuring bacteria on my dock. Tell me about it.
Yeah, that was back in 2013 or so. It's been, this is our beginning of our 8th season right now. And yeah, we sample bacteria levels at 15 different hotspots all around the Charleston area for swimming and paddling and fishing. We do 2 right here in James Island Creek, including just there off the end of your dock. And unfortunately, we get some really high results. We've actually had tests that are 24,000 times the state limit for safe recreational use. That suggests some really serious problems with bacteria in James Island Creek. The reason we sample bacteria is because it's an indicator for the disease-causing pathogens that are present in the waste of warm-blooded animals. And so I guess it's probably just best to be candid about what we're talking about. We're talking about poop. And human waste, animal waste can carry with it viruses and pathogens that make us sick when we swim or when we paddle or when we get that in our eyes and our nose and our mouth during recreational activity.
Well, we have found 2 big sewer leaks on this creek.
Yeah, just last year there were two big sewer leaks. One over by Harborview Road and another one just here off the Central Park Road that discharged raw sewage into the marsh or into the creek itself. And so those are sources of bacteria. Septic tanks can also be a source if they're malfunctioning or they haven't been inspected or maintained. Dog waste. A lot of people don't pick up after their dogs in their own backyards, and that can be a source of bacteria and waste to the creek as well. Boat discharges too from boats with marine heads, but that's not really a problem here as much as it is in some other places.
Today, I could actually swim in my creek safely because we haven't had any high tides, we haven't had any big rains. How often is that affecting my swimmability?
Oh, geez. Our data set shows a real strong correlation between rainfall and bacteria levels. So the more it's been raining, the worse water quality is. The longer it's been dry, the better water quality is. So just last week, we had really good results. They were very low for James Island Creek, which is fantastic. But it's been really dry. So what I would expect is after the first rainfall, the first sampling event after that, we'll have high bacteria levels. And that's because all that waste that ends up on the ground gets washed off into the nearest creek or river during the rain or the flood storm. During the rain or the flooding event. And so, a lot of people think all that flood water goes somewhere to be treated. It doesn't. It drains away and comes right into a creek.
Well, there are a lot of different groups that have helped with all of these issues. But we also have a task force, don't we?
Right. One of the neat things, we've been generating this data for 8 seasons now. And we've used that data to help folks realize that these creeks need to be taken care of, that we as a community need to take responsibility for them. And Mary Edna, you've really led the way with that, right? To stand up and say, this is my creek and I want to steward it and I want to see something done to get it cleaned up. And between you, our data, and some requirements in state and federal law, we've been able to get all our local elected officials, the city of Charleston, the county, Charleston County, town of James Island, to work together and come together under this James Island Creek Task Force. And that's going to be the group that will oversee all the different projects that we're going to need to collaborate on and implement to get this creek cleaned up to make sure it's safe for swimming all the time. Not just when it's been dry. This creek should be safe for swimming 100% of the time.
That's right. And under this umbrella of people who care, we may clean up some more creeks too.
Creek by creek.
Creek by creek.
That's how we're going to do it.
That's our mantra.
I mean, look at this. This is what makes our community special. These creeks, these rivers, the ability to be down here, to experience it firsthand, to fish, to swim, to paddle. I mean, this is what it's all about. This is what's worth fighting for.
Thanks. Oh, we can't.
Nope. 6 feet apart.
Yeah. Bye, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, hi. This is the first time that I've ever met you,
Yes.
Rachel Halls from the Coastal Conservation League. But you grew up right over there.
I did, not too far from here. I used to swim in Shem Creek all the time as a kid.
Oh, how wonderful. And tell me about your background. And you worked with DNR.
I did. I worked with DNR right on Fort Johnson Road doing our marine education program. So I'm familiar with talking about all of this habitat to kids up through adults.
And what is your title now?
Now I am working at the Coastal Conservation League, and I am our land, water, and wildlife project manager. So I manage our oysters, salt marsh, and fisheries related projects, which is a new position for the league, and we are moving forward with it.
Great. Well, tell me about Shem Creek. Tell me what you know about this creek.
Yeah, Shem Creek is an interesting one because there is so much going on in the creek at one time, and I think that's what plays a really dynamic role with it. You know, you have the shrimp docks, which have been here for ages, and now we have more restaurants and bars on the creek, which increases boat traffic. And then when you go further up the creek, you get to a lot of residential houses and eventually a couple of roads that cross over the creek.
So tell me what you could do to help your creek.
I like to think about it from a watershed approach. So everyone thinks about it from the up of the creek down to the, and that flows down out the creek. So really focusing on what's up creek for you too. So what's up the river affects everything down the river, and everything on your portion of the creek will also flow right out into a harbor or to an ocean right below you. But my area of habitat that I focus on is really this creek to land connection. So everything you do on your portion of the creek has an effect on the land, that transitional period right up to your property and landward.
How about banks? Can you shore up some banks?
So a living shoreline is a natural way of protecting your shoreline. So we think of, you know, putting up walls and rock walls as one way, but now there have been lots of research studies done where you can utilize oysters and salt marsh in certain ways to promote that type of habitat, which then protects your shoreline. This can be done, so oysters alone help break up some of that wind and wave energy that will pound your shoreline and cause erosion, but not only do they help break that up, they also help build up the salt marsh behind the oysters. So if you think about this grass right here, they have a whole root system right there on the shoreline that helps stabilize your sediment, and so helping prevent erosion from occurring on your banks.
Like long fault garden structures. Hey, tell me about Crab Bank.
Yeah, so just at the end of Shem Creek, as you know, there has been a huge successful restoration project that's just occurred. Multiple partners have rallied together to restore Crab Bank back to its original footprint and even larger. And it's a huge, great safe space for migratory birds to go to that area and nest and rest before continuing on their journey.
How have Coastal Conservation League and other groups helped African American communities like Cainhoy and Phillips?
Yeah, the Phillips community was experiencing some development pressures, and they live off of, that community's off of 41, and they wanted to expand that highway and run the expansion through the middle of the community. And thanks to organizations in the communities in that area and the members who spoke up and were advocates for themselves, That highway has now officially been rerouted around the community, which is really great.
That's a wonderful, wonderful piece of news. How about Cainhoy?
Cainhoy is experiencing development pressures as well. There have been proposals for, I think, 16,000 homes in that area.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
It's hard to even envision, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm not going to.
Don't. Hopefully we won't have to. But I think what we're really promoting there is protection of that cultural area and that important cultural space, as well as that habitat and natural resources in that area. There are red-cockaded woodpeckers, which are an endangered species, but also reducing the flooding risk there. The more homes you build, the increased chances of flooding can happen.
Yeah, and we do live in that kind of community, don't we?
I mean,
everybody on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
What other things would you like to touch on that I haven't asked you?
Well, the Coastal Conservation League, as part of my role, has been working on doing some oyster restoration projects around our community. And we're always taking volunteers. If people want to come out and help get some boots on the ground and put your hands to work to help restore our oyster population. So you can come out with us and build an oyster reef.
Where do you do it?
We have one notable location that you can see from the Charleston Harbor, and that is right at Chutes Folly, which is where Castle Pinckney is.
Oh, at Castle Pinckney.
Yes, we've done 2 builds out there totaling almost 170 feet of oyster reef.
That's
Yes, and we'll be doing another one out there coming this spring.
wow. So you have all ages working with you, don't you?
I do. We'll take anyone as long as you're able to come out and help us.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping, that these videos will get people more involved environmentally. And every single person's vote, every time they write to their legislature, every time they tell a friend what they're concerned about and cause action, they're part of the process for change for good.
Absolutely.
Well, I sure have enjoyed talking with you. You're just a lovely spark of joy.
I think the same about you.
Elder, young. Well, I'm out here right where Captain Sam's Spit is. And I'm with Amy, and she's with Scout, the South Carolina Environmental Law Project. And boy, is she an environmental warrior. Well, tell them about Scout.
Thanks, Mary Edna, and you're one of my heroes too. So thanks for having me and putting on this exhibit. So SCALP, South Carolina Environmental Law Project, is a public interest environmental law organization. What that means is that we're a charity, a 501c3, and we're supported primarily with donations, and grant funds. And so all of the work we do is for the public benefit. We work in the public interest to try and protect the natural environment. And our mission is to use our legal expertise to protect the land, water, and communities across South Carolina. So we play a really unique role because as opposed to advocacy groups that we partner with, like Charleston Waterkeeper and Coastal Conservation League, they do a lot of advocacy work, but sometimes you just need legal intervention. And the buck really stops with making sure that our laws are properly implemented and enforced, and frankly advocating for better and stronger laws that protect our natural life-sustaining systems. And it just goes to show you how much is at stake on both sides, right? Because there was a proposal to build 50 houses here on this, what is right behind us right now is an entirely untouched, undisturbed barrier island spit. It's one of only 3 publicly accessible, pristine barrier island spits in Holston, South Carolina.
Golly, and this spit comes and goes with storms. And they wanted to put something the size of a football field behind it. You think hold it in there?
Right, well, so you're right, the spit does, it's historically migrated. It's been completely underwater and did not even exist at least twice in recorded history. It's gotten washed away and then it builds back up, and that's really what happens with these barrier island spits. Are very dynamic to undertake different activities to shore up this really dynamic and changing ecosystem, to really fix and harden the shoreline so that they can build a road and infrastructure to allow them to do this development out here. And so what was at stake, obviously, is the public using this as a resource. And this is our property.
Yeah.
It's public trust property because we're on lands below the national water mark, and we own these lands. And so it's a really something that's of immense and immeasurable value to the citizens of South Carolina. We're now having a battle over those same public trust resources up at Debadoo Beach in Georgetown County. And what's happened there most recently is some homeowners are trying to build structures, hard erosion control structures, on the beach. And then you've got waves against the wall, which scours out in front of the wall and causes exacerbated erosion. And then you just have a wall of water. No public beach at all. Lose your beach.
Yeah.
So, wrapping up on Debadoo, what's the tension there is the tension between public beach, public property, and private property. And so we've got some important decisions to make in South Carolina about what we're going to prioritize. And SCELP is committed to prioritizing the public resources. But you asked me about sand mining, and that's something we've seen more and more of because there's so much development pressure, especially in coastal South Carolina, that we see a proliferation of mining activities. We have over 500 mines in South Carolina. Over 500 mines.
The Fresky, and that's a pretty
It really is. It would have been the only mine ever, sand mine on the West ever.
It would ruin that island.
On the other hand, up at Myrtle Beach, which is in Horry County, we've been trying to fight an illegal mine operating up in that area.
It's illegal.
Right. They don't have any permits.
No permits.
No permits. And we were able to capture with drone footage that they are actually doing these activities on this property illegally. And so we're working to bring enforcement and challenge those activities.
What would you ask for the dream situation to be?
The dream situation for me would be that we actually have a legal system that is designed to account for the natural system that we rely on for our own health and livelihood. I mean, we are also animals that inhabit this planet with a lot of other species, and we are completely interdependent on that. We're way out of balance, and we really, we're too human-centered, and we need to think about the other life forms that exist on this planet that we need for our own survival. And so I would like to see a legal framework that really prioritizes life-sustaining systems. Sign up for our e-news and newsletter at www.skelp.org.
She makes it so easy for you to tell your legislatures what you think and how to affect change, or how to keep what we hold dear in public hands. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
My brother Burke piloted Granddaddy's 1946 Air Coupe December 2021 on an aerial excursion from Charleston, South Carolina. Past Debadoo Beach along the South Carolina coast, just north of developed Cherry Grove Beach is Wadey's Island, a natural, undeveloped barrier island. In January, I returned to paint, rolling brushes to capture tree lines. A palette knife tip renders the tops of pines. As sunlight dances on the marsh colors, change and heighten. It is such a joy to be outside and paint and capture color. From the causeway is the first painting of this adventure. Facing the opposite direction, looking at the pristine waters and the north end of Wadey's is a totally different scene. Watching the tide recede. Oyster Beds is the name of this painting. Around 500 acres, 3 miles long and a half-mile wide, Wadey's Island is one which needs to be protected for future generations. The Nature Conservancy is the easement holder for Coastal Carolina University Marine and Wetlands Department's third of the island and uplands called the Ann Tillman Boyce Reserve. The Tillman Boyce family owners have been wonderful stewards of this rare jewel. Painting on the southernmost end of Wadey's, a great blue heron came and sat on a branch for most of the time, eyeing me cautiously. The rising tide and the setting sun forced me eventually to move quickly. But the finished oil of Cherry Grove Inland really vibrates with the energy of that location. We are experiencing increasing development and loss of natural coastal systems. Wadey's Island is a crown jewel in the midst of the highly developed and highly impacted Horry County. But until under permanent protection, the development remains a threat. South Carolina Environmental Law Project is working to support ultimate permanent protection of Wadey's. Nestled between the high dunes, listening to the gentle crash of waves, the third painting on Wadey's starts to formulate. As an artist, I listen to my intuition and do not contemplate what marks to make or tools to use or the colors for the palette. Starting with the horizon and elements in the background, the ocean and dunes begin to form. Gamblin oils are my primary choice with their solvent-free gel as medium. Dunes is the name of this artwork. These are the high dunes on the north end that are currently in a state of accreting or building sand. My parents' ashes are in these waters. To my right is North Carolina's Bird Island and Little River Inlet. When you sit in nature, you become more aware of constant change all around you. The oils take over as the clouds pass overhead, threatening rain. Belgian linen double-primed archival panels are my preferred surface, and a Strata easel and all the supplies fit into a 35-pound backpack. This plein air is truly gooey. Thinking about Van Gogh, but I have no desire to cut off my ear. Wadey's North Dunes is the last painting of this excursion. Thank you, Corey McIntyre, for the drone footage and helping me tote my supplies and make sure I have water and food breaks, that I don't get snake bit. This film is her baby, but we did it together and we had so much fun. I like having a friend with me when I paint. as Brother Burke safely navigates home in the sunset, we smile and count our blessings. It's another brother-sister trip that's just so much doggone fun.